Alright guys, welcome to the second episode of Cook Around and Workout. As I promised yesterday, there's a bunch of videos that I've got in store for you. And one of them is this one, the Bruchetta video. This one is a recipe that I learned to make in the first restaurant I worked in. It's pretty quick, and I'm going to make sure it's quick because UVA basketball replays are on and I want to watch that. This one's a little more technical, so you'll see a little bit of knife work, but you should be able to keep yourself safe. So adjusting this down to here, all you've got: garlic, some fresh basil leaves, a few tomatoes. I prefer aromas, and then any kind of bread that will get crisp. So like I have a baguette here, but you can do ciabatta or anything that'll get kind of like crisp enough to hold this up. And then just olive oil, salt and pepper. So first thing that I always will do is I'll just flatten out the garlic. So I'm using the heel of my hand on top of the knife, and as you can see, it's already pretty flattened. And then I'm just chopping that up. If you watch my offhand, it's on top of the blade, holding down the edge, and then I can just kind of pivot, right? And so again, I'll repeat and make the pile small. You want this pretty small. When I make it for myself, sometimes I'll leave the chunks a little bit bigger, but especially if you're making it for like a group, you want to kind of try to make sure that the garlic is small enough to get evenly distributed. So there's that, and then I'll just take this and throw it right in. I'm going to stir this up in some Tupperware so you can actually see the kind of texture consistency to it. And then I'll do the basil. And the garlic, I try to go like 2 cloves. A lot of people they're like, I love Italian food, so I'm going to do all the garlic ever. And it's really like, if you want it to be the best, in my opinion, there's a balance to the flavors. Like, you don't want to just get excessive with the garlic. Like, make it how you want to make it for yourself, but especially if you're making it for a group, there shouldn't be like 4 ounces of garlic for every basil leaf type of thing going on, or you might kind of overpower some people. So now we focused on like scary animals last time, so I'm gonna try not to overwhelm you with too much like fear factor animal facts. So one of the really cool things, armadillos are actually really good swimmers. They can hold their breath for up to 6 minutes underwater. So again, that's just olive oil. I've got it just kind of like to soak the stuff for right now. They can hold their breath for 6 minutes. They have really bad vision, so if you actually stand still and don't move a lot and don't make any sound, like, they probably can't detect you, which is crazy. They use hearing and scent to track their prey. When you're cutting the tomatoes, you're going to start with a different knife. I actually have a tomato-specific knife, but you can use anything that's got a serrated blade, so like these teeth like this, and that's because otherwise you're going to have to fight the peel. So again, doing these, and I cut off the ends. Now, a secret with this recipe too is if you know ahead of time you're gonna make it, you can let it just kind of sit once you get your finished product. So once I cut up the tomatoes and I add them to the mix and I season it, I can just let that kind of sit. And I use the phrase radiate flavors. A colleague suggested marinate. I kind of view that as like a meats thing, but it's your call what you want to use. And again, I want them to be sliced, so like, whoops, I'm on a roll. So I want them to be sliced kind of thin, but it's really not that much of a precision thing. I mean, the plating, eventually these are all getting chopped up anyway, so the plating is really kind of a secondary concern. The tertiary concern being that there are now 2 tomato slices on the floor. In the oven, I've got that French bread toasting, and that's so I can put this on when it's ready to show you the final product. So once I get these stacks, I'll then kind of just chop up the tomatoes, and I go back to my favorite knife for that because the skin's not an issue anymore. And again, when you're making it for yourself, you can be less particular with the size of your stuff. But especially when you've got like company, you don't want to overdo it. This is another way for or making it in advance helps actually, because you let the juices kind of sit there, and if you have like sliced Romas sitting around, you can actually just go ahead and like pour some of that juice that's going to collect from the sitting tomatoes into your mix. And that'll help the flavors again kind of like radiate or marinate or whatever language you want to use around that. There's actually the 9-banded armadillo that has identical quadruplets whenever it has young, which is kind of crazy. So every single time it has young, it has identical quadruplets. And the other cool thing with those guys, with armadillos, is that only the 3-banded armadillo can actually roll up into a ball like we see in cartoons. All the others have too much plating or too many plates in their body armor, so they rely on the thickness of that armor to actually keep them from getting eaten by predators. So yeah, they can hold their breath for 6 minutes. They're good swimmers. They actually like inflate and hold in breath to be able to float. Otherwise they sink because their armor is too dense. So you can kind of see this texture that I've got going here. So there's oil to it and there's juice, and nothing really is like overwhelming it. So you can kind of see there, and you'll see it again in a second. Now I'll usually leave it like this. You can add other things to the mix too though. So tonight I am going to mix it up and add a couple of ingredients. But you don't have to. Like at the restaurant, this was how you would serve it on the toasted bread. You could add like fresh mozzarella, you could add some meat to it if you want. I'm gonna go with a look. This I'm stealing from a different restaurant that we've gone to as a family. So taking a look, and yeah, these are about ready. So I've got my 2 baguette slices here. Let's see. I'm gonna grab another cutting board right quick. This one's covered in juice. And so then on this other cutting board, I'm just gonna break up these 2 baguette slices into smaller ones. You can do that beforehand too. Whoops. So yeah, again, you'll want a serrated knife to cut the bread, a biggie. And you hear that crunch. That crunch is good. That's how you know it's gonna have a good balance of like textures to it, but you have that kind of oily, juicy top. And then you'll also know that it's going to hold up with all that oil. Because if you had a really soft bread, this would just sink into that and it would just totally fall apart and you would create mush. So, there's that guy. Turn this off so I don't burn the house down. I did notice that I left the burner on like right after I cut the last video, but you know, I wanted people to make sure that I do enforce that, and I do endorse, you know, turning off the oven. And so then, this is just kind of how you want to do it. So I just kind of balance it out, make sure there's a little bit on each one. I have a little bit left, but I've got this other bread that I've just gotten juice on, so you can actually keep this stuff in the container for like a day or two, and again, you'll just get that kind of flavor balance going. So I was pretty generous with the topping on it. I'm going to add some prosciutto, which I usually get this as like a 1 pound thing, usually from like a bulk store. And this again just kind of adds that cured sort of kind of sweet, kind of salty flavor to it. I'm a sucker for this kind of stuff, so if you don't like, you know, the like cured hams in like the prosciutto or like a jamon iberico neck of the woods, don't bother. But I like it, and I saw a restaurant do it, and it was a good taste. And I'm just going to add a little bit of shredded Parmesan on that. And this I just get at the grocery store. And you could like toast this, because this is going to be tough to keep together. You don't have to. And again, you could just do fresh mozzarella instead of that. You could leave it as it is. You could add something else. So then that's your end product. So you're right here. And so this would serve like a bunch of people, probably 2 or 3, especially as like an appetizer. All right. So tomorrow I am planning on doing the first workout video here in Cook Around and Work Out. There also might be that guacamole video either tomorrow or the next day, and then I've got a couple more like entrees versus side dish ideas for you coming up. So subscribe, leave comments, suggestions, questions, animal facts, etc. Peace.